welcome to Vikings Happy Hour, where we mix our favorite beverage and talk of your Minnesota Vikings. Now,
welcome back. It's another week of Vikings Happy Hour, and I am joined by Tanishka, Ryan, and the producer. He's coming out from behind the screen. Dave is here tonight to talk all things Vikings. As we're only, I think I saw 16 days away from the draft. It's coming up quick. We've had a lot of content, a lot of guests on this show, and I feel like I had to get Tanishka back on.
2 weeks from tomorrow.
Is it 2 weeks from tomorrow?
Yeah.
Wow. But like I was saying, I had to get Tanishka back on. I felt like her first appearance was slightly dampened by the internet issues, but I think we got that fixed, and I think we're ready to roll. So let's start this show out how we know we can, and go around and talk about what you're drinking. I did not have a chance to run to the liquor store today, so just a Mick Golden. I found it in the back of my fridge. Always there probably, but we'll just keep moving down the line. Tanishka, any beverage of choice this evening?
No, I just got water today.
Hey, that's good. Got to stay hydrated.
Yeah.
I pounded a bunch of water before the show. Ryan?
Yeah, I did not get to the brewery or liquor store today. So last week we had the Four Roses, so I'm going to keep that rolling. I also have some water here. Cups actually were made by an engraving company, Homestead Engraving. They do a bunch of different designs. So this one's like a straight cash homie, right? I don't know if you can see it because of the lighting or whatever, but this one, he fit the like Vikings logo backwards into the Minnesota crest there. So they do great work. I know them personally. So if you're looking for any engraved cups, glasses, stemware, boards, anything like that, they do it. So Homestead Engraving.
That's sweet, man.
Well, I'm the only one that's actually drinking something decent.
Hey, now.
Four Roses is delicious. Bite your tongue.
No, and I like Four Roses, so I'm not going to slam that. The Truth Imperial IPA, I've had it before on Happy Hour, and I'm continuing tonight. So, with that,
I love it.
Let's start the show.
Hey, Skol Mateo for drinking some Bacardi, man. That's great.
My buddy makes some good Bacardi Limones. In fact, I might have to have one of those soon when I see them. But let's dive right into. I feel like it's kind of a popular topic. I feel like I hear a lot of people talking about it. But quarterbacks in the Vikings, maybe being drafted in round one, maybe trading up. Not a lot of background info here for you guys, but I just want to get your initial thoughts on it, and we can go from there. But what are your guys' thoughts? Tanishka, I'll start with you about potentially if a Fields or Lance falls to 8 or 9 or 10, the Vikings trading up and going to get a guy like that.
I'd do it. I'd 100% do it, especially if one of them is there, like 8. I think 9, if either they're the Broncos, will pounce, but 8 or 10, if not us, it'll be somebody like New England or Washington or even the Bears that might trade up to do it. But I think it's worth it because we're at 14, which is the highest out of all of those teams. So if a team like Carolina wanted a left tackle or something, like we'd be the best because we're the highest pick out of those. So we'd be their best shot at getting that kind of player at 14. And I think it's just a good idea to have the succession plan now because you can probably trade Cousins next year if you really want to. It's only like $35 million cap hit, which is like a lot, but the way that it's like going up, I don't think it's terrible for the team that trades for him because I think we pay $10 million of that. But I think that the team's sort of stagnant where they are right now with Kirk. I mean, it's not entirely his fault or anything, and I do defend him a lot, but I think that it would be good to kind of just like start over in that sense to just because they have a lot of young pieces around him. But even next year, they're gonna have a ton of needs because a lot of their like defense is on like 1 year deals, and it might be a good chance to just like start over and just like rebuild in a way.
I think you brought up a good point with, and I didn't make this connection at first, but when we think about maybe trading up with Carolina, um, and it would make sense for us to kind of trade with them because if they're looking at tackles, right, like trading back to 14 from 8 should be like a pretty good option for them uh, to move back and still get. They're not going to get Seawall if he falls, but they could still walk away with a decent tackle, probably tackle number 2, right? What do you think, Ryan?
Yeah, I mean, that's where I think I do have maybe a little tougher time seeing it. I think we're actually probably in a better spot, even though they did just trade up for it, I guess. So that doesn't make much sense. But like for the Dolphins, because when you look at the Panthers, they did just solidify or they traded some capital for Darnold. So they are going to want to, I think they're targeting left tackle is probably their biggest need. Sewell, again, likely is going to be gone, but if he's there, they're not going to trade out of it. And they probably aren't going to pass on Rashawn Slater. Maybe they do, but I doubt they do because if they trade back with us, they have another team that's likely coveting a left tackle in the Chargers who are right before us. So that's where I feel like it might be a little tough. Now, SI put out an article today. They did a mock draft amongst their writers, and both Fields and Lance lasted to 14. They had a bunch of defensive guys go in a little earlier than they thought. J.C. Horn, Patrick Surtain, and a couple other guys where it caused those quarterbacks to fall. Mm-hmm. So I think that would be an interesting scenario that we're at 14 with the pick of Lance or Fields and then making that determination there, which Fields I have rated higher as like I don't think he has as much of an upside as Lance if Lance hits his full potential, but his ceiling or his floor is way higher in my opinion. So I would rather go with Justin Fields in that scenario just because I take the safer pick. But I thought that was an interesting scenario that played out amongst their mock draft that they did because I can't imagine either one of them lasting to 14, but if they both did, I mean, that'd be pretty incredible. So.
Dave, what are your thoughts? I know that you're pretty. Are you critical of Kirk Cousins?
Oh, yes.
I feel like you are.
Oh yes.
And I feel like you're on board here, but I do want to hear your thoughts.
Well, my first question was when the whole question of the show is, do we take a quarterback early? My question is, what's early? First round's obviously early. But his third round, early. It's early for the Vikings. It's early under Spielman. He hasn't taken a quarterback other than Stanley in anything other than the first round, and he's got burned on the first round picks. First with Ponder, and then with Teddy, not because of Teddy, but because of Teddy's knee exploding. It's, what's early. Now, if a quarterback drops in the first round, say Lance drops to 14, I'm all for it. Hey, I'd be happy. I don't think it's going to happen. I don't think they would do that. I think at that point there's another teams behind that would be willing to come up, and then we do the trade down thing. That's Spielman's deal. I don't think he has the intestinal fortitude to say no, and I'm picking a quarterback here, whether Kirk Cousins likes it or not. I could see it happening in the third. I can't at the most, and that would almost be shocking. But I could see it more likely in the third than I can in the first. Would I like them to do it? You betcha. Why? Because now's the time to get Kirk's replacement. Period. Kirk's the wonderful stat hog, right? His statistics and box scores are absolutely fantastic. But he's a 500 quarterback, right? He doesn't have that it factor that other quarterbacks do and is valued so much. So, and the question is, do we want to pay him next year? Next year's salary is $45 million if he's here. We can trade him, pay a part of that, do whatever is necessary. And then this year have whoever we draft sit a year behind and learn. And I think that's a good thing. And that would be a good transition into the next era of Vikings football if you're judging the eras by the quarterbacks.
I think Tanishka brought up a good point, though, and you're kind of dancing around it, Dave, but this team is just stagnant, right?
It is.
Like,
well,
and
I mean, I think they're going to do
just,
better this year. We're going to make the playoffs probably, and then we'll do a 1
right?
or 2 and out.
That is stagnant.
And it's nothing.
That's the same thing since 2009.
The question is, can Kirk Cousins win you the game when it counts the most? And he has failed. I don't trust him to. And he has failed to demonstrate that every year in this league.
I think that's key right there. I don't trust him to. I think he could. I mean, Trent Dilfer won a Super Bowl. Let's not get off track there. But like,
yeah, but why did Trent Dilfer win the Super Bowl?
A good defense.
Yeah, a world-class defense.
Right, and the Vikings don't have that right now. But I think that's the point to maybe look towards the future here. And it's not to say Kirk is a bad quarterback, because I know you called him a stat hog, and to some extent, yeah, sure. But I do think, I mean, I was talking with a buddy the other day. I think Kirk actually might be close when we consider all the quarterbacks now. He might be like flirting with top 8 quarterback in the NFL. And because when you actually start listing those names, it's getting hard when you get to that 8, 9, 10 range to just dismiss Kirk, because Kirk is a good quarterback. He's got some pretty obvious flaws, but at the same point, just because you have a good quarterback doesn't mean you shouldn't be going for the future. But going back to taking a quarterback early, Dave, I know you touched about like Rick wouldn't want to trade up, but what do you think it would maybe cost to trade up? I'm trying to transition over to that segment here for like draft assets, but it would cost to trade up.
Well, you're looking at, if you're trading up, we don't have a second round pick, so we'd be a first and a third, multiple thirds, multiple fourths, which we have possible, but it may be a first this year and a first next, or a second next. And Rick generally doesn't like to use future picks. Now, if you believe that Mike Zimmer and Rick Spielman are tied at the hip, and how this season goes, determines their fate, they may be more willing to use future draft choices as collateral, or not collateral, but use them in that sort of deal, because they're playing for their lives, basically, and they've got to get it right. Now, will they? I don't know. I personally, I would love to see it. I would like to have the excitement. Hey, we got our quarterback of the future on the roster. We don't have that now.
Tanishka, you looked like you were going to say something there.
Yeah, I think the thing, like, just in general, I don't know how much it really means, but the Vikings still haven't addressed the backup QB spot yet. And it's usually been like one of the first things they've done the last couple of years. And unless they trust Nate Stanley, but I don't think so. I do feel like,
or Browning,
they're going to choose. Oh yeah. They're going to draft a QB maybe like day 1 or day 2, like round 3. But I feel like in general, it seems like, it could mean nothing, but it seems like a subtle hint that QB might be like higher on their agendas than we think.
Well, I think Doogie reported that this is like the most homework they've done on a quarterback class since 2014. Like, it's well known. Mm-hmm. Like, they're not even hiding it.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
And they haven't re-signed
He said they've
Manning.
talked to like every QB. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, you look at Slick Rick, I remember back when we took Dalvin Cook, the rumors were flying about Zimmer and Joe Mixon talking, and they're like, are they going to take Joe Mixon? And all
Oh, yeah.
the show is over here, and meanwhile they trade up and take Dalvin Cook, and no one saw it coming. And I could totally see a scenario where we're sitting there on draft night and we take a guy like Justin Fields or we take a guy like Trey Lance, and everybody will look back and be like, well, we thought Rick was at those pro days looking at offensive linemen, and here he was watching these quarterbacks instead, kind of holding his cards close to his chest. Ryan, I think your mic was muted, and I think you were going to say something, so I want to give you the floor.
No, I was just saying that, yeah, he was spotted at Alabama's pro day for Mac. Again, not necessarily just Mac Jones, but, Mac Jones is there, which, again, I hope we stay away from. I don't even have him as a first-round grade. Justin Fields' first pro day, Trey Lance's pro day. And so, I mean, he was, I think he was at BYU, I think, yeah, because we assume he was there to watch Brady Christensen, but again, maybe he's looking at Zach Wilson.
They have a picture of him watching Wilson.
Yep, absolutely. So I mean, there's definitely, potential intrigue there. And again, this might be the move that saves his job, not necessarily Zim's job, but for sure his job, because if he can get a exciting young quarterback to put him in place, get this fan base excited about the opportunity of having the future, next guy, the next, Patrick Mahomes, the next Baker Mayfield, that next guy, then, that's exciting for a fan base, and that might save his job. And we don't again, like Tanishka had said, we don't have a long-term option, right? Because Kirk's contract ends after 2022. There's no guarantee he wants to be back. He may say, you know what, you can either franchise me or I'm off to the highest bidder. So we don't have any security there. So with 1 year left on the contract,
any leverage.
No leverage,
no
security, and we're not going to extend him right now after his guarantee winning, because why would he do that, right? So we're at a spot where we don't have a long-term answer. I mean, we have Kirk Cousins, but after 2022, unless we draft a quarterback that year, which again is forcing our hand, versus again maybe likely not in this top of high of a pick. Because again, we're probably not going to visit this 14 range next year. Dave, I think you had said we're likely going to make the playoffs this year. I don't think that's a guarantee. I think we have a really hard schedule, and I think some of those teams have gotten better. But a 500 team, and that's probably going to land us in the 15 to 20 range again, right? And that's not really a great spot to be in. So I think if you have an opportunity with a quarterback-rich class like we have here with 4 really good guys, you do it. And if you can't get one of those 4 guys, third round or even trading up in the second round for a Davis Mills, or if you like Kellen Mond or Kyle Trask, I'm not a fan of his at all really, but then you do that as well.
Tanishka, I want to pose a question to you quick. Let's hear what you have to say first. I'll come back to my question.
Cool. Now, I was just gonna say, I saw Clifford in the comments saying that like one bad game from Kirk, then the media can hype QB competition for the rest of the year. But like, who knows? It could do what it could just make him play better. Like it could even if we're not tied to him beyond next year, he could play better if we take one. So there's that. And if not, then I mean, it's fine.
You light that flame underneath him, and we're about to see how he really does under pressure, right? There's all the talk about, well, he can't perform under pressure when, the big game is on the line. Well, there's no greater pressure than a rookie quarterback sitting on the bench behind you. We saw Teddy do it with, I guess it was Ponder and Castle, but I guess it still applies. But the question I wanted to pose to you, Tanishka,
we saw it last year with Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I think that's a perfect example.
And Aaron Rodgers took it as motivation, went out and had a MVP season. Now,
and they're still probably going to get rid of him.
No, they already
not this year,
after this year, he's going to be gone.
Well, maybe we don't need a quarterback. Maybe Rodgers is going to come in next year as Kirk walks out. But I do want to ask this question. I know I'm throwing you on the spot. What do you say to the fans who when we talk about trading up for a quarterback, I think the biggest question is like, well, there's still needs on the offensive line. There's still needs at edge. Why would we trade up and give draft capital to trade up where we still have, holes across the roster?
I think even if you do address a position like edge or offensive line, with your first pick, you're not gonna like suddenly turn into Super Bowl contenders. Like either way, I feel like no matter how good of a draft they have, they'll probably still be playoff contenders next year because I just don't think that roster. I just don't think it's there yet with everything. And um, if you just take a quarterback, you still have like what $7-8 million in cap space that doesn't include the rookies. Then maybe you just sign like a Ryan Kerrigan or like a tackle like Eric Fisher, or I don't know, some free agent like that, and just roll with that player for just next year and um, spend the picks on your QB because I feel like the Vikings, they're always in like 1 year windows, but they're not never like the best team. Like there's always teams that are better than them. So instead of just like going all in for this year, I feel like trying to compete this year while being responsible about the future would be a good balance. And I do think that like it would a quarterback like Lance or Fields or whoever they're high on would be worth it more than like Elijah Vera-Tucker.
Yeah,
Hey,
and talking about draft capital too. I mean, when you look at the quarterback class next year, even so, yeah, let's sure. I like the idea of solidifying the O line and the D line and all of that. That all sounds like great, but if we're in this position again next year and I think Mateo even mentioned this out there in the chat, the quarterback class next year is not nearly as strong. You have, I think, Sam Howell from UNC. You have obviously Spencer Rattler if he decides to come out from Oklahoma. You don't have a ton of depth. And again, if you're not in that top 3 pick, you're likely not going to have an opportunity to get that unless you trade even more than you would have to this year for a guy who, like Fields, would be probably number 1 pick in next year's class if he would have stayed one more year, right? So I think that is another wrinkle that you have to think about when you're talking about the future here.
A couple strikes against me here because I'm about to bring up another Oklahoma player, but I'm surprised that that's your stance, Ryan, because if the Vikings pass on a quarterback this year and everything goes downhill, we could be in line for Oklahoma's quarterback.
And obviously, I'm all for that. I mean, we missed our chance on Baker Mayfield. We missed our chance on Kyler Murray. We missed our chance on Jalen Hurts. Spencer Rattler's the next guy in line. But again, I'm assuming he'll be unless he just is really bad next year, which I can't imagine. He's just got all the talent in the world. He's going to be a top 2 pick because it's that Sam Howell kid out of UNC is really good too. So, he's got all, we have to be a top 2 pick. And the fact that our roster is good enough to not be in that position makes it hard for me to hope. I think JR or Jordan Reed, he had mentioned Ryan's going to be insufferable next year with Rattler being in the draft. And I agree if it was a somewhat realistic possibility we could get him, and I just don't see that happening.
You never know. Kirk Cousins torn ACL and you're rolling with Nate Stanley the rest of the year?
Maybe. Wouldn't agree on anyone.
Another thing though, with that question, I was just thinking it would be easier to just like, I don't know, move Brian O'Neill to the left and then just draft a right tackle in like day 3. Like, I don't know, Spencer Brown, maybe Brady Christensen's there. And take like your QB at 14 because you can still solidify the offensive, or not solidify, but like make it better than it is. And take a QB at 14 or in the first round. Maybe it's just not like, maybe you don't get an edge this year, but I mean, the defense I feel like still has enough to be a pretty good unit. So it's not the end of the world.
Right. And you may have your starting tackles on the roster already, be it.
Yeah.
Obviously, O'Neill's going to play one of the 2 positions, and they can move him to left. They can keep him at right. You have Ezra Cleveland, and you have Rashad Hill that they think could do it. So or at least they think Rashad Hill can do it. I'm not sure what they think about Ezra Cleveland other than he's a guard, which is asinine. Anyways, and you've got Udo stepping into his third year, which is always the big step year for offensive linemen. They may stick with that. They may stick with, we're talking edge. They may stick with, combination of Wanham and Weatherly on the one side. And that leaves them free to literally, if they want a quarterback in the first round and one falls, they could get it.
I don't think we pay enough attention to kind of like the beginning of last season when there was that, it was Riley Reif's either gone or he's taken a pay cut. And the Vikings were 100% comfortable going into that season without Riley Reif. And it's pretty much who we have right now, right? We have O'Neal, Cleveland, Dozier, Bradbury.
For that day in practice, they moved O'Neal over and Rashad Hill on the right.
God damn it, Ryan. Yeah. And I think what would happen if they don't take another tackle early in the draft or at all, I think they'd probably try, Rashad Hill and Oli Udo at right tackle. Maybe give Cleveland some reps there, but I feel like they're going to leave him at guard, which will lead us right into my next topic for the show. Do guards even matter?
I'm going
to
say
take the bait
no.
Here?
Oh, I'll do it.
Tanisha started. She says no. Guards don't matter.
I'll clarify that. I'm going to say no to a certain extent. Like, I'd say the worst guards in the league matter, and maybe, like, the best, like Quentin Nelson, matter. But having an above-average guard or an under-average guard doesn't matter, or an average guard. Like, those three tiers, I guess, though, like, you're not going to lose or win a game because you have an under-average guard versus an above-average guard. But having the worst duo of guards in the league like we had last year at a couple points, that you can't have that either. Like, they matter to some extent, but not really.
Now,
is there another elite guard?
Correct. Top 5 guards matter, bottom 5 guards matter. And last year we had the bottom worst guards, and that matters. Everything in between statistically doesn't matter as long as they're competent, roughly average. So,
is there another elite guard other than Quentin Nelson that
Zach
I'm just
Martin,
missing out? Okay.
Brandon Brooks is pretty good too.
And like Wyatt Teller, last year was the number 1 rated offensive lineman, I think. So, yeah, obviously, like, guard play matters, right? You have to have a cohesive group, but it doesn't mean that you need to spend elite draft capital that takes away from other positions that probably matter more to solidify that. And to just touch base quick on our last topic, which was tackle. There's depth in this tackle class that does go into day 3, like Tanishka was saying. I don't think Spencer Brown or Brady Christensen make it to day 3, but there's guys that have like high potential that like maybe had an injury history, or maybe maybe they were a smaller school like Western Michigan. So there's guys like Walker Little, who was a consensus first round pick his first 2 years in in college, and then he got hurt, and then he sat out last year. So he's like flying way under the radar, but he's like an athletic, big prototype left tackle. He's likely going to go 3rd, 4th, 5th round because of the fact that he hasn't played in 2 years. You have guys like Jalen Moore and Dan Moore, Texas A&M and Western Michigan, who, again, profile to be athletic guys. Deontay Smith from ECU. There's a whole list of guys that can play tackle. And again, they might not be ideal day 1 starters, but going back to drafting Justin Fields or Trey Lance, you're preparing yourself for the future. And if you can develop a Deontay Smith or James Hudson out of Cincinnati and have a legitimate left tackle in 2022 to go with Fields and to go with, Janarius Robinson from Florida State at edge to pair up with Danielle Hunter. And all of a sudden now you have a really good young, but, cost manage team and then you can fill in around those guys that are missing. So I think that's just a call out.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where you make your runs, right? So I think that's just a quick call out. But going back to guards matter, I think they do matter. Like you guys were saying, I'm not going to rehash everything you guys just had mentioned. But yeah, we just need something competent. We're literally like I've used this analogy in the past. I think maybe on the mock draft Mondays, but we've been sitting in negative 10 degrees with Samia and Dozier, right? And 30 degrees is still really cold. Like you're not going to go out in your shorts and t-shirt, but when it goes from negative 10 degrees to 30 degrees, it feels really warm outside. And that's all we need to do. We need to get a guy that can, I know he got signed, but like a Forrest Lamp who wasn't that great, or a Trey Turner, or some of these guys, plug him in and just be competent. And it's going to feel like summer versus the polar vortex, right? And yeah, we don't need 80, 90 degrees Zach Martin and Quentin Nelson. That would be nice, but we don't need that if we can't guarantee ourselves that because there's no guy in this draft that is Quentin Nelson except for like Rashawn Slater at guard. But you're going to try him at tackle first because he can play tackle, right? So I just don't see the need there to force that early, personally.
I'm probably selling this person a little bit short, but I feel like just give us an Anthony Herrera again. Like he was not spectacular by any means, but you know what he was? He was consistent, and he was a force on that line amongst those other offensive linemen.
Herrera had an attitude. He was consistent.
Our offensive line doesn't have an attitude.
Beating up on defenders, and I love that. That's why I like Samia. I don't know what happened to Samia.
Well, maybe he bounces back.
It's baffling. Yeah, he could.
They can't
shout out to
develop
Mateo. Shout out to Mateo. He said just get a bunch of LSU and Oklahoma players. I'm all for that, man. I love that.
Do you want to take Maurice's question, Ryan? David Mills or Kyle Trask if you had to pick one round 3?
Oh, Mills by far. I actually like Mills. I think I'm having a hard time right now giving QB5 to either Mills or Kellen Mond. It's not Mac Jones. I think Mac Jones is probably QB7 for me. I like Mills's game. Mills is going to give you he's going to be kind of like Kirk, actually. In terms of he's not overly mobile, but he's mobile enough where, if he needs to step outside of the pocket and run for 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 yards, he can do it. He's a pocket passer mainly, and he's very accurate in the short to mid game. He can improve on some deep ball accuracy, but I think, again, he wasn't working with the best of talent at receiver either at Stanford. And then Kellen Mond, again, he's going to be somebody that you're going to have concerns with because he had some consistency issues in college, and he played in the toughest, conference in college, but still you had a lot of opportunity to show something, and he had great flashes and he had really duds, big time duds. So, but the skill set, the tools that the kid has is better than most quarterbacks in this draft class. Like rocket arm, he's got some good accuracy, very mobile, but again, boneheaded decisions. So, and then Kyle Trask, I know he was a Heisman, finalist, and he put up a pretty darn good season at Florida. Don't love his arm strength. Don't love his athleticism. And he's athletic, but not enough where I'm excited about it. And granted, yes, he was missing Kadarius Toney and Kyle Pitts and some other guys in that game against Oklahoma this year in the bowl game, but he just looked bad. Like he did not look like a competent player against. I know in Oklahoma was trying and Florida wasn't trying, or whatever they want to say, but that coach was just a nerd. I couldn't believe what that coach said after the game, but he just didn't look good. I mean, and actually his backup, I forget the kid's name. He looked more competent at that quarterback position. I know Kyle Trask was a Heisman finalist, but again, it's kind of the Mac Jones thing, right? Is Was it all because he had elite weapons around him all year? And when now he has to go take those elite weapons, because he'll have those in the NFL, but and pair that against elite competition, is that going to, make him back to, level playing field? So, so to answer your question, I would take Davis Mills. I just like his skill set a little better.
I'm going to keep this show moving along. So for everybody who's listening in the chat, what's
I
up,
would
Dave?
like to answer Ed's question. Ed asked,
Oh, go for it.
would fielding 2 guards instead of running 5 wide receivers statistically be better for the Vikings? And I'm assuming by fielding 2 guards, 2 competent guards. Average, right? Which is way above what we have now. Versus,
So I think what he's asking, right, is just getting 2 competent guards or running a 5 wide receiver set each time.
well, you're not going to run a 5 wide receiver set. That's no. But having 5
Why not?
good
Empty
wide
package.
receivers.
Come on, spread it out.
Well,
College game all over again.
But I'm betting now. This is something that we need to ask friend of the show, part of Climbing the Pocket, Eric Eager, Dr. Eric Eager from PFF, what the value on that is. I'm betting because of the offense we run, getting 2 competent guards, having 2 competent guards would be more productive than having all those wide receivers. Because right now we have 2 premier wide receivers. We have a good tight end. We have the best, if one of not second best, running back in the league. We got people that can catch the ball. But the offense, with it the way it is, I think we get more points and more consistent drives with the 2 guards than we would throwing in a couple extra wide receivers. But that's
we should shoot Eric a message in the chat and see what he says to that. But before anyone else
Eric
speaks,
will say the receivers. I bet Eric
I bet he will
receivers.
too.
Well, even Ed.
People in the chat right now and listening live, give us some questions to kind of wrap up this show. I'm going to toss one question to Tanishka here that was given by Justin LaRue, and it says, how much more improved has the defense become because of free agency? So I'll let you answer that, and hopefully we get some questions in the chat to kind of bring us home here.
Yeah, I would say that a lot, because I think is it 7 or 8 new starters, and they're basically all upgrades. And I think just even Jalen Holmes to Stephen Weatherly's an upgrade. It's a small one, but just mostly everything is an upgrade. I guess the only real downgrade is Anthony Harris to Woods,
which may not be.
Yeah, that's possible too, because people just play really well next to Harrison. So
right, and Harris didn't play well last year because he was
yeah, that's true
corners.
Too.
So Woods may come in and look like Harris did 2 years ago.
Yeah. I think it would have this defense now would have gotten us in last year to the postseason, but because I think we were a game out. But I do know next year everything the schedule and stuff is tougher, so we'll see how they adjust. But I'm excited to see what Zimmer does with it, because I know that he was talking about adjusting to new offenses and stuff. So I think the defense just in general will have a different look to it next year. So I just want to see how effective that becomes, and that kind of just depends on success.
Yeah. Ryan and Dave, I'll let you take one of those questions. We got one from Maurice and one from Ed. So whatever one, Ryan, you want to take, Dave, you get the other.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll take Maurice's just because it came in first. So if we drafted cornerback Caleb Farley at 14, would you be pissed? Depends, I guess, is my answer. I'm not pro no corner in the first round at 14. I I would rather trade back and see if you can get even like a Greg Newsome at that point. If you trade back, because I like Greg Newsome a lot. Caleb Farley is talent wise, he's probably top 2. I think I had him rated 2 or 3. I can't quite remember for cornerbacks in this class. So he's very talented. He does have a recurring back issue. So 2019 and then this year he just had a procedure to kind of clean some stuff up. He should be ready for the season, but again, it's just a data point to work off of that. Hey, he's got an injury past with a very sensitive part of your body, right? The back is a very sensitive part of your body. But from a talent standpoint, if all that cleared out, Farley at 14 is a great deal. And again, it sets your cornerback room up for the future. Again, like we've been talking about all show, let's setting our team up for the future. So I wouldn't be pissed. I wouldn't be like jumping for joy either. But yeah, I guess that's my answer.
I'll take Ed's. My dream free agency, last bit free agency signing is a trade. It's Orlando Brown Jr. And it sets us with bookend tackles. We'd of course have to work out an extension, and I would match it with O'Neill's. And of course, that's a big chunk of the cap, and Ed's our cap guru. He knows that. And then that would probably drop us either down or out of the first round, and then I'd go get that quarterback in the third. But that Orlando Brown Jr. to solidify our tackles, then I'm not as worried about the guards and press on. I'd be happy.
I would have said Jadeveon Clowney had he not signed today with the Browns. The potential Super Bowl champion Browns, maybe. Hell, they got a loaded roster over there, and I think that's what the Vikings could hope for with a quarterback on a rookie contract. Tanishka, I saw another question come through, and I don't know how well you know the mid-round players in the draft this year, but I'll offer that question up to you from Mateo. Any mid-round player that you would like to see on the Vikings?
I do love Milton Williams. I don't know. His stock's been going up since his pro day. Probably could have gotten him in like the 5th or 6th before that, but it's going to be like the 4th, I feel like, or maybe even the 3rd. But I think that like he becomes that like you have 2 good interior linemen, but you don't really have that much interior pass rush. Like Tomlinson gives you some, but I feel like moving Tomlinson to nose on 3rd down and then plugging in Williams, because he's like a pure interior pass rusher, that would be fun. And he's a late-ish round pick, but I feel like he could get you decent production like rookie year, and then working with Andre Patterson would just help even more.
I think we can justify almost any later round selection of a defensive lineman just because of Andre Patterson. Like, I wish we had that same type of coach on the offensive line where we could be like,
Yeah.
7th round offensive lineman. Like, who cares? We have so-and-so as the coach, but we just don't have that. I'm going to go through one by one. We're 2 weeks and a day away from the draft. I want predictions from you because I don't know if I will get the chance to ask you guys again before draft comes up. So one final prediction. Dave, we will start with you. What do the Vikings do at pick 14? Or not 14. Maybe they trade. What do the Vikings do round 1 of the draft?
I have no idea. If they go
you
by
settle on something.
If they go by their tradition, they're drafting for need and not necessarily BPA, but we discussed BPA isn't necessarily the right thing to do. If you're drafting for need, you want a best player available in that position. I'm seeing Darisaw all over the place. 3 tech. I suspect they'll, if Slater drops, one of the good tackles, they'll go that route. We have Jake asking about AVT. If he drops, by far, he's probably the best guard prospect on the list. I suspect they'll go that way, but there may be a hit. You guys may be right. They may be looking at quarterbacks, but I'm I'm betting a lineman. I'm betting an offensive lineman versus a defensive lineman, even though Zim may want that defensive lineman. I don't like the edges as much as other people do, so I'd rather go offense.
Do you want to give a name to an offensive lineman, or are you just gonna say it in general?
Just in general.
Okay, Ryan.
If we stay at 14, I'd love Darisaw. I would not love Elijah Vera-Tucker. I don't think we need to spend that high pick on a guard. I don't think it makes sense. I don't think it's smart. The last time we spent a high pick on an interior lineman, it's Garrett Bradbury, and he's ass. So I'm not a fan of his. So if it were me, and if I had the opportunity and I were to take a guess, I would love that trade back, try to recoup some sort of picks, second round pick, third round pick. And I would take, again, if you want an interior lineman and you're thinking AVT at 14, I would much rather trade back, go grab Creed Humphrey, go grab, Dylan Radens, right, at 28. Let's say you trade with whoever's at 28. I can't remember. I think that's the Saints. But and you go grab a quality offensive lineman that's going to be on par with AVT by the end of the day. I think Creed Humphrey is likely going to be the best interior offensive lineman if Rashawn Slater doesn't move to guard in this draft. And hey, Creed Humphrey gives you center flexibility too, so you can play guard, and if Bradbury continues to suck, you can kick him over to a more important position at center, and you're set again for the future there. So because we always talk about the guards as our two biggest issues. We have three issues on that offensive line. It's all three interior. I know Bradbury's set in stone, so to speak, but again, just because he's a first round pick 2 years ago doesn't mean anything. Laquan Treadwell was a first round pick, and he had to go sit behind again some quality players, but I think that you need to make these guys earn it, and Bradbury, in my opinion, hasn't earned shit. So go draft a guy to maybe push him, and then if Bradbury plays well, because I don't think Bradbury can play guard, then you can kick Creed over to guard. So
go off, Ryan. Holy buckets. Tanishka, what do you think?
I don't think we're gonna pick at 14. I don't know if it'll be up or down, but I don't think we're picking at 14. But I would say, like, ideally, I would trade down and take more defense. No, I would take Jalen Phillips probably. I just like him too much. I feel like he's like top 15 talent, but he's gonna slip because of that concussion history. And if they're comfortable with that, then they can draft him. I feel like just because he fits them, he's really athletic, and I think he would be a really good on the opposite side of Hunter as well. But I just feel like they need pass rush if they can get it. Like, I don't want them to force and take an edge in round one, but at the end of round one, I'd rather have like Jalen Phillips than Elijah Vera-Tucker or someone like that, or Samuel Cosme or someone, because I feel like you can get that kind of player in day two and just kick O'Neal to the left, so blindside's covered. But I personally would go defensive end if they trade down. If they stay where they are, I don't even think Darisaw is going to be available because the Chargers, they need a left tackle. So I feel like Darisaw is going to go pick before us, even though I'd love him. And then I just don't think that 14 is just such a weird spot because I feel like the top three linemen, Sewell, Slater, and Darisaw could all be gone. And then I feel like there's a little bit of a gap before like Jenkins or Cosme or like the next set of them. But 14 is also too high to take a defensive end because I do like Pay and Phillips and stuff. I just don't think they're 14 good. Just because of Phillips's medicals. If that was like clear, then I'd be a bit more confident, but I'm not. And I just don't see them taking any other position in round one, even though I myself wouldn't mind like Devontae Smith if he's there, which I think he could be just because of like the whole size, weight concern stuff. They wouldn't do it, but I would. But ideally, I would just trade down to acquire that second round pick because then you can just take someone like Radens or Eichenberg or Leatherwood, or I don't even know, someone like that you can start day one at right tackle and address another need at the same time. But like in my dreams, I would take a QB, but I just don't think that's going to happen, but that would be wonderful.
Covering all the bases. I love it. I'm gonna be bold. It's not even bold because people are talking about it already. Vikings are gonna trade up. They're gonna. I feel like all the stars are aligning. We see it, right? We called it out at the beginning of the show. Rick's been at these pro days. He knows these goddamn quarterbacks, and he wants one. He wants to save his job. We're about to see Spielman at his most vulnerable, and he's gonna jump at the opportunity. If Lance or Fields are there at 8, I think they offer a deal that the Panthers can't refuse. I know trade value wise, it would be like the pick 14, a future second, and a fourth this year for like 8. And I think the cap value or the trade value says that you can ask for a third back. I think Rick says screw it. I think he says I'll give you 14 and next year's first for 8 and a third or a fourth, and we just call this a deal. He gets ahead of his former GM Peyton, snags that quarterback away from him, and then we just ride into 2022 with a brand new quarterback. How cool is that? That's what I think is going to
be
happen.
amazing.
If it does,
I'm
I'm
all
kind of
for it.
screwed because I promised our buddy Myles a jersey if that happened, and then all of a sudden all the steam picked up on it. So maybe I can get out of it.
For a great Thursday night live as
Oh,
we're
for
broadcasting everyone here, because if that happens, all of you are going to be calling in, and I'll be just switching screen after screen after screen.
I think I'll be on at that
Tanishka,
time.
what do you think? Matt, what do you
Right.
think? Ryan, and we'll just go through.
Yeah, is our show on at that time, I think?
Oh yeah,
It's on
well,
at 8. So.
I don't know what is scheduled.
Oh yeah.
Right, Flip's schedule, but if something big like that happens, we'll get everybody on.
I think Tanishka
sure.
7
That's gonna be
and Vikings
exciting.
Happy Hour is 8 o'clock. So it'll
Should
be
right about the time that we're picking.
or
Yeah.
trading up. So
I even want
everybody,
to get Ed on.
yeah, absolutely. Everybody in chat, thank you for sticking with us tonight with this show, talking about all these crazy scenarios. And Ryan, Tanishka, Dave, appreciate you guys as always hopping on. Tanishka, your internet held up. Hell yeah.
Yeah, it did.
Let's
It's working now.
Let's get it going again for draft weekend as well. Everybody can tune in next week. I don't remember what the time is, so make sure you check Twitter. But Jordan Reed will be back on from the Draft Network and his Climb in the Pocket days with us, and we are going to deep dive some prospects. So you will not want to miss that episode. And Doogie could not come this week, but there is hope that he can come the night before the draft with some big scoops before we head into it. So thanks again, everybody, and Skol Vikes.
Let's go. Thank you for watching or listening. Where'd the video go?
As always, if you like, subscribe, and ring the bell for notifications.
Working right? Hold on.
And if you're listening to the
Let's try it.
Thank you for watching or listening. As always, if you like, subscribe, and ring the bell for notifications. And if you're listening to the podcast, please rate us on your favorite aggregator. Skol, everybody.